the nation's capital in Abuja. The offering today includes our complimentary segments, namely newspaper review, sports, foreign news. But in the meantime, here is Tessie Omeri with the morning news highlights. Good morning, Tessie. Hi, did you enjoy the rain?
Yeah, it's a rainy Tuesday morning here in Abuja. Good morning and welcome to the morning news. The fourth Nigeria International Petroleum Summit, the African Petroleum Technology and Business Conference, is resolved to turn the global crisis occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic to opportunities. The theme of the summit, From Crisis to Opportunities, now approaches to the future of hydrocarbons. Key players say is indicative that though it cannot be business as usual, collaborations and innovations to align with the best of the producers to stay afloat cannot be compromised. To this effect, President Muhammadu Buhari gave a commitment to making Nigeria a credible investment destination.
For us to look inwards, and what we are saying, for example, in the local content front, we expect that we will begin to look at opportunities for developing our local capacity because of what the pandemic did to us.
Today, the whole world is transiting towards more renewables, and energy companies must see that opportunities, both in terms of producing the current resources and also moving to new resources, renewables, solar, wind, and other resources that are available. But for us, most importantly, the world will still be utilizing gas for a long time to come.
Very hopeful that we will be able to pass it this month of June. And I want to appreciate the cooperation and partnership between the two arms of government, the legislature and the executive arm. We have been able to really cement the relationship so that we are able to work together seamlessly.
President Muhammadu Buhari has formally granted audience to the Acting Chief of Army Staff, Major General Farouk Yahya, urging the military to spare no effort as dismantling obstacles to national security and stability.
The new Chief of Army Staff thanks Mr. President for giving him the opportunity to serve as the Chief of Army Staff and promised that he will bring all his experience to bear in collaboration with his colleagues, the Chief of Air Staff and Chief of Naval Staff, to be able to do this country proud.
The incessant destruction of the nation's infrastructure willfully has assumed a worrisome dimension, as no sector is spared of this act that has continued to endanger the lives of innocent citizens. This formed the basis for a special town hall meeting by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture to draw greater attention to the trend.
In recent times, efforts of the government have been thwarted by some unpatriotic citizens through wanton destruction of critical infrastructure, thereby depriving the greater citizenry for whose benefits these projects and services are provided from enjoying them.
One cantankerous individual decided to just go and demolish our fence and allow the airport to be so bare.
The truth is that no nation grows beyond the capacity of its infrastructure. So every little one that we have, we must optimize it.
We are taking off over 25,000 covers of one form or the other. And these are critical public assets that you and I own that are being vandalized.
The National Broadcasting Commission has directed all broadcasting stations in Nigeria to suspend the patronage of Twitter immediately. They install Twitter handles and desist from using Twitter as a source of information gathering for news and programs, that is especially phone-in. This follows the suspension of Twitter operations in Nigeria by the federal government over the persistent use of the platform for activities that are capable of undermining the corporate existence of Nigeria. In a statement, the Acting Director General of the NBC, Professor Armstrong Idachaba, said the Commission is issuing the directive because the Section 2(1) of the NBC Act entrusts the Commission with responsibility to ensure strict adherence to national laws and rules and, of course, regulations, while another section of the code provides that the broadcaster shall ensure that law enforcement is upheld at all times in a matter of depicting that law and order or socially superior to two or more desirable than crime and anarchy. The statement therefore appealed for strict compliance to the directive and noted that it will be unpatriotic for any broadcaster in Nigeria to continue to patronize the suspended Twitter as a source of its information. And Nigeria's Foreign Minister Geoffrey Onyema has met with members of the diplomatic corps to discuss issues concerning Nigeria's interests and security.
Nigeria's strong partners on issues of security, and we recognize the daunting times and the array of security challenges that confront Nigeria.
The partnership, our solidarity with the 5 countries was reaffirmed. They have supported us very strongly in our security challenges, humanitarian crises, development challenges, economic challenges.
First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, has commended the Nigerian governors' wives for their roles to their spouses, as well as to her humanitarian program under the Aisha Buhari Foundation towards the upliftment of health and the general well-being of women, youths and children. The First Lady gave the commendation when she received the Nigerian governors' wives who paid her a courtesy call in the State House.
It is important to consolidate our efforts on lasting legacies. So we thank the Almighty God for bringing us together this evening to meet and discuss some progressive activities in our nation.
As mothers, we also need to be mindful of the security issues around us at the moment and do what we can, especially with young people.
The federal government has reiterated commitment to rescuing the remaining Chibok schoolgirls in the captivity of Boko Haram insurgents. Minister of Women Affairs Pauline Thailand re-echoed the determination of government during the inauguration of the completely remodeled government secondary school Chibok, where 219 girls were abducted.
Was destroyed completely. It is therefore heartwarming to witness the official reopening of the school today after it was refurbished to allow for normal activities to resume.
Rehabilitate and reconstruct houses, rehabilitate villages with a view to ensuring quick return of internally displaced persons to their ancestral homes. This is the only solution to ensure lasting peace and sustainability in our own state.
May God bless them and give them more time to help us, help others, and they should provide for all the things we need, and God bless them.
And a 3-day retreat to strengthen interagency collaboration and organizational effectiveness has been organized by the Ministry of Police Affairs for agencies and parastatals under the ministry.
To review the functionality of the various departments, agencies of Nigeria Police was a view to open new frontiers through fostering of synergy, coordination, renewed loyalty to the system.
It is hoped that at the end of the day, a more vibrant intra-family coexistence will be born.
Only joint collaborative approaches also in the area of policing will bring the prospect of success.
All roadblocks, tinted permits and spy number plates are banned nationwide with immediate effect. Inspector General of Police Alkali Usman Baba gave the directive during a strategic engagement with commanders in Abuja.
I'm glad to note that with your support, we have made significant progress in the attainment of our mandate, such that between April and May 2021, a total of 686 high-profile suspects have been arrested during various police operations across the country. They also include the principal suspects involved in the attack on His Excellency Governor Samuel Otom.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, as at 7th of June 2021, has recorded 49 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. Out of that, Ondo has 30 new cases, Lagos 15, Kaduna recorded 2, Gombe 1, and Adamawa 1. The total number of confirmed cases now moves up to 166,816, with 166 3,190 already treated and discharged, while 2,117 deaths recorded in 36 states of the Federal Capital Territory. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kingsley and Jumme after this break. Good morning.
Recently, both the president and vice president demonstrated leadership by being among the first Nigerians to have the AstraZeneca vaccine administered to them on live TV for all in the country to see. Subsequently, many federal ministers, political leaders, and members of the Presidential COVID-19 Task Force have publicly taken the vaccine to follow in the footsteps of President Buhari and Vice President Oshibaja. To obtain it yourself, please go to the NPHCDA website. There is a link to click on in order to register and schedule your vaccination. In the meantime, please continue to wear face masks, wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer, and observe social distancing. This message was brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Revision classes on television for students in secondary schools in English and mathematics will commence on the NTA. The revision classes will transmit Mondays to Fridays from 5 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on the network service of the NTA. This is organized in preparation for the various national examinations and orders. This is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Education.
My son has always dreamt of being in the spotlight. As his mother, it is my duty to help him live up to his dream. That's why I give him Born Vita every day, which contains iron, zinc, and vitamin C that supports his immunity and gives him the strength to pursue his dreams. Born Vita, strength to dream.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. On business package, the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation trains first batch of forensic auditors and examiners for ministries, departments, and agencies. Let's join Kunle Adeyeye for details.
The digital lab leverages technology for automation and evidence-based data management for proper accountability. It also gives real-time access to files across ministries, departments, and agencies for the purpose of audit, with 24 forensic auditors already trained. Auditor General of the Federation says auditors will resume in MDAs next week.
When you want to get an answer with evidence that will even stand prosecution, court prosecution, you look in the direction of forensic auditing. It is not only just audit evidence for the National Assembly, it is equally evidence that could be gathered and tabled for prosecution of culprits.
The project has so far gulped 74 million naira. The Auditor General is optimistic it will transform the nation's audit system. And to details of Monday's tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the business package. Next on the program is newspaper review.
Baya Toby, newspaper reviewer, is with us this morning. As always, Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning.
Good morning,
Jimmy. How did you feel waking up this morning? Drizzling and making you reluctant to get out of
sleep.
Did you say drizzling?
Yes.
It was heavy
in my area. Yes.
Well, in my area, it wasn't drizzling.
Mine was heavy.
It was heavy.
Started around 4:30 a.m.
Windy as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that makes driving pretty hazardous.
Yes.
But it's all right. Temperatures have plummeted, so that's fine.
So we have some newspapers this morning to review. Let's start with the Inquirer, the Abuja Inquirer. Just above the masthead, we have FG's Twitter ban wrong and overreaction. That's attributed to the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN. And below the masthead, Area Council Chairmanship, 90 candidates battle for 6 slots, with kicker 15 political parties in the race. 90 candidates battle for 6 slots, 15 political parties in the race. COVID-19, 144,000 FCT residents receive vaccine. And the picture story is still there. President Muhammadu Buhari receives in audience Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Mr. Sunday Dare, and President of Nigeria Football Federation and member FIFA Council, Mr. Amaju Melvin Pinnick, in State House on June 4th, 2021. At the bottom plate of the Inquirer, at the Abuja Inquirer, Constitutional Review, Bello seeks more powers for FCTA. You'll find details on page 5. Over 40,000 candidates to miss admission into Unity schools. Over 40,000 candidates to miss admission into Unity schools. Details on page 7. TED Fund raises alarm over attempts to defraud 2 million students. TED Fund raises alarm over attempts to defraud 2 million students. You find details on page 9. Pregnant women who eat too much risk gestational diabetes. That's attributed to Akinde. You find details on page 14. That's it from the Abuja Inquirer.
Okay, we'll take a look also at the Nation newspaper. Just starting from above the name flag right to the foot of the page itself. Bandits killed 33, steal animals in Zamfara and Kaduna. Ebube Agu's failure to take up forces founding chairman to quit. Those pushing for Nigeria's disintegration satanic. Details of that can be found on page 6. And the photograph of the Sultan there would seem to indicate that those words are attributed to him. Those pushing for Nigeria's disintegration satanic. Then below the nameplate, 97 bodies recovered in Kebbi boat accident, page 4. Dozens killed by headers in Benue, page 4. 4 million barrels per day oil production is target. And the lead story comes with a double-decker headline: Federal government declares attacks on public assets terror act. And with a rider, removal of rail tracks may attract death sentence. And some of the assets are listed there in a sidebar to that story. They include killing of policemen and attack on police stations, removal of rail tracks, attack on INEC facilities, attack on prisons, and destruction of bridges. Twitter suspended for threatening national security. That headline there is quotes, which means that it's referencing a government official. And 2 riders there, US, UK, EU, and others, insist on free access. Federal government and social media giant in talks. And then right at the foot of the front page, INEC ready with list of new polling units. And Northern Elders advise Igbo leaders, page 35. Payo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start with news about security. Nigerians have been assured of a lot of changes in security operations in the nation to further secure the nation. This indication was given during the formal presentation of Major General Farouk Yahya as the new Chief of Army Staff to Mr. President. Accompanied by Minister of Defense and the Chief of Defense Staff, he was said to have shared his experiences with the Army Chief and demanded him to currently put pressure on security. He explained that what transpired during the presentation was that the Minister of Defense explained that what transpired during the meeting was that the issue of synergy between security agencies was canvassed. He indicated that while security is up and doing, particularly in the north to end Boko Haram, the security will also continue to give maximum cooperation to the police to see an end to banditry, kidnapping, and other criminal activities. Meanwhile, troops of the 4th Demonstration Battalion, Nigerian Army, have repelled bandits along Kaduna-Zaria Highway. It may be recalled that recently the bandits had held sway along the Kaduna-Zaria Expressway. The Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arua, says that bandits had to retreat when they were attacked by members of the 4th Demonstration Battalion. And in the process, they had killed 3 persons at Dunki village and also stole some livestock. Governor Nasiru El-Rufai has condoled the families of those who lost persons in that wild attack, and he has also thanked the 4th Demonstration Battalion for clearing Kaduna-Zaria Highway of these hoodlums. The brigade commander of the 34th Artillery Brigade, Obinwe in Owerri, has described as the persons known as unknown gunmen or otherwise referred to as hoodlums are causing havoc, having killed over 150 security operatives in the 5 states of the southeast. At a joint media briefing, the brigade commander, Raymond Utasha, and the commissioner of police for Imo State, Abu Tuyaro, indicated that 78 police officers have been killed, 38 army officers have been killed, 5 naval officers and 7 air force are among those that have been killed. Others are 15 Nigerian civil and security defense officers, 31 community policing members, and over 100 innocent citizens who do not support IPOB or Eastern Security Network and who refuse to pay money have been killed across 5 states of the southeast states. So if you add all, in a total, over 374 persons have been killed in the southeast states during this area. Meanwhile, the Northern Elders Forum has asked leaders of the southeast to prevail on the secessionists to sheathe their swords to avoid another civil war. Spokesman for the Elders Forum, Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, said at a briefing after their meeting, said, Northern leaders have resolved not to allow any war in the country any longer. He says that from all the attacks that are ongoing, targeting some Northerners and federal government employees and the destruction of national assets must stop. Talking about destruction of national assets, henceforth, the destruction of public assets and facilities are to be treated as act of terrorism. This was a pronouncement that came from a town hall meeting, the 19th in the series held by the federal government. The theme was protecting public infrastructure. Minister of Works and Housing, that of Transport, that of Aviation, and the Federal Capital Territory joined the Minister of Information and Culture at the town hall meeting. Lai Mohammed said at the town hall meeting was important because it touches on the economic growth and the national development. In FCT, over 400 manholes covers have been destroyed, creating room for erosion and flood. You recall, Kingsley, there was a time you draw attention to this manhole. Sometimes you walk at night and you don't know there is a manhole, and all of a sudden you fall into it. Because,
even your car can
been removed. The Minister of Transport gave a list of railway tracks that have been subjected to destruction, and as well as bridge railings that have been removed. You can imagine a wagon, a train wagon now that we have between Kaduna and Abuja and Lagos, Ibadan, and of recent from the Ajaokuta end, carries 88 passengers. If you have 8 or 10 coaches in a train going, and the track has been vandalized, and if it is not cross-checked, the tendency is that you are going to have a derailment, and 880 persons are likely to be in danger. And this is why alarm is being raised. And the Minister of Aviation also drew attention that equipment that are meant to detect air sharing, if you recall, Liso aircraft was, the air crash was attributed to air sharing, and these equipment are destroyed. And the Minister of Aviation is drawing our attention that there is another Liso air crash similar to that pending because of this unbridled destruction. In the area of public facilities, police stations, INEC offices, and public infrastructure have been vandalized. And therefore, the Minister for Works and Housing advocated for a twin sanction. First, anybody who is caught should be made to pay for the cost of the destruction. And secondly, such person should also be prosecuted. A senator who attended the meeting said a bill should be sent to the National Assembly, and he gave assurances that the National Assembly will give it expeditious attention. Juma, you read a headline earlier on from the Inquirer?
Yes.
The one above the nameplate. What does it say?
FG's Twitter ban wrong and overreaction.
Now, in our journalism, we are saying facts are sacred, comments are free. That is not factually correct. And the error came from the Wall Street Journal when on 4th June, it reported that Nigeria's president has been banned by a blog site. It is not correct. The action that was taken by the blog site was the deletion of M. Muhammadu Buhari, deemed to be a violation of the blog's policies. This followed many Nigerians who had flagged that tweet and have called, and therefore the entity, the blog platform, said it removed it, the post, because it is violating its community standard. Daily Trust has done a check on this, and it says that the account on the platform has not been banned. The President Muhammadu Buhari's account has not been banned. When it last checked, he found that the blog is still available. So it was only removed. Another misinformation is that on 5th of June, Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, said the suspension of the platform was for the persistent use of the platform for activities capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence. Again, some have reported it as the platform has been banned in Nigeria. So there's a difference between suspension and there's a difference between taking down a tweet on the platform. And incidentally, the presidency has also reacted to this. The presidency says the temporary suspension is not related to the removal of President Muhammadu Buhari's post. Rather, there has been a litany of problems with the blog site, with misinformation and fake news spread through it and has had violent consequences in Nigeria.
Especially
Garba
during the
Shehu
EndSARS,
recalls that in 2019 at the United Nations General Assembly, President Buhari had actually drew attention to similar things that had led to 50 persons being killed in New Zealand.
Yeah, just before, Bayo will let you go, there are a number of issues, of course, we know that we have on the front pages this morning. The usual killings going on in different parts of the country, so you have all kinds of stories around obituaries, whether in Zamfara, Kaduna, or the dead bodies being retrieved from River Niger. The photograph there on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer shows the Minister of Sports, the NFF president, who is a member of the FIFA committee, and the president. We can see that photograph on the front page right now. Let's go there and then see that very quickly. If we, of course, we're presenting. Yes, you can see a jersey has been presented to President Buhari, and his name is M. Buhari. That is number one. So it becomes our national goalkeeper, I believe.
Well, those are the days.
Yes.
Usually, jersey number 1 was meant for goalkeepers. Ththis day, you have goalkeepers wearing jersey number 32.
Yes.
Well, I think it started.
This is our number one.
For us, it started with Peter Rufai,
yes,
our goalkeeper. Yeah. I think it was a late call-up, and I think his jersey was either number 23 or some such number. But regardless, I mean, Emmanuel Okala, who turned 70, always wore number 1 jersey, yes, and Emmanuel Okala is as tall as President Muhammadu Buhari. Yes. So I'm sure that President Muhammadu Buhari would be a safe belt.
A good stead in the goal
absolutely, a safe belt hands.
In the Nigerian goal post.
A safe belt hands. And while we were discussing the vandalism of public infrastructure, part of what is required, because we've discussed it on Good Morning Nigeria, particularly rail infrastructure, public enlightenment is useful. And then we also need additional infrastructure to safeguard the rail tracks. That's by way of fencing and so on and so forth. Take a look at this photograph. Look at that. This is the Jibo in Lagos. Yes. That's the heart of Lagos. People are just sleeping, vagrants are sleeping on the rail track. Broad daylight. This is not the night time.
Maybe they are tired of removing the rail tracks and are just resting so that they can continue.
Well, they haven't vandalized because that's a fairly open area. But we've had in the past, even when the train services had reduced their frequencies, there have been a few accidents.
Yes.
Particularly at the level crossing, because the traders spread their wares on the rail track. That's what we call Yaba by the right. Yes. So when the train is coming and is putting, that's when they start removing their wares. And unfortunately, some of them get caught up because the train has its own speed and its brake is not automatic. And a few persons have been killed. Yes. But the whole idea of vandalizing public infrastructure is a serious national issue. Serious national issue. And why we are this way, why there also appear to be no swift sanctions. This is why these things are just going on. Yes. There are off-takers. Where are these off-takers? When you say you remove the covers of manhole, these are iron covers, from Nigerian foundries or wherever. Now they are using concrete. Who are the off-takers? There are iron smelters all over the place. What you just need to do is infiltrate their ranks and make an example of 1 or 2 of them. And I'm sure that you will have some lessons taught.
The backing should be followed with a bite.
That's right.
You see, I was shocked when the Minister of Transportation revealed the quantum of destruction on the track. In the Northwest, it was said to be about 46, which was the highest. In the North Central, it was about 33. And you can imagine, like Kingsley pointed out, at the level crossing at Yaba, at Mina, at Kaduna behind the Gumi market, traders put their wares on the rail track. And something must be done to put back the rail barricade to stop instances whereby vehicles run into train coming.
The FCT minister was with us last Friday on Good Morning Nigeria, and he indicated that the Abuja light rail, some of the tracks have also been vandalized.
Yes.
So we can't, government should not be seen to be helpless. So we pick up some of these guys, make an example of a few of them, and then let's see how it goes.
Well, Bayo, that's it.
Thank you for having me for today.
Thank you. We'll take a break right now. When we return, our conversation will begin.
As Oni of Ife, as someone who cares about the well-being and safety of our people, it's time for each and every one of us to realize that COVID-19 is real and it has killed millions of people around the world. Scientists have developed this vaccine. The vaccine is safe for everyone and it contains no microchip, nor can it alter our DNA. However, we must continue to stay safe and stay clean, wear face masks, clean our hands on a regular basis, and try as much as possible to avoid a very large crowd and gathering. For those who choose to be vaccinated, it will go a long way in protecting yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19.
Trust the Center Fresh liquid food gum to refresh your confidence instantly. Center Fresh liquid food gum. Trust the freshness.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
You're welcome back. And like we said earlier, we're discussing 6 years of Buhari administration focused on oil and gas sector. Now, where are the concerted efforts by the current administration to getting us started again after the global shocks on oil and gas? To kickstart our conversation, here's a background report packaged by Ekene Njuli.
Nigeria, blessed with the largest natural gas and second largest oil reserves in Africa, has an estimated reserve of 37 billion barrels of oil and 5 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. Since the exploration of oil and gas gained huge commercial essence in the country, the battle to strike a balance between maximizing revenue, wooing investors, and protecting the people and the environment of host communities has remained a challenge. The emergence of President Muhammadu Buhari as Nigeria's president in 2015 was hugely received with hope of new things to come, especially with the promise of reform in the oil and gas sector forming an important part of his campaign promise. So far, the administration has made milestone achievements in the sector, prominent among which are The groundbreaking of 614-kilometer Ajokuta-Kaduna-Kano gas project, successful completion of Nigeria's first marginal oil field bid round in almost 20 years, which is expected to raise in excess of $500 million and open up a new vista of investment in oil and gas. Policy, regulatory, and funding support for the establishment of modular refineries across the Niger Delta. Establishment of a $350 million Nigerian Content Intervention Fund to finance manufacturing, contracts, and assets in the oil and gas industry. With recent assurances from the National Assembly, passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill, which has been in the making for over 20 years, is in the offing. This will also be a remarkable achievement in the lifespan of the present administration. However, with the achievements made in the sector, things have not been all rosy. Issues around subsidy, deregulation, bunkering, gas flaring, and environmental pollution have continued to persist. The COVID-19 pandemic that took the world by storm also came with huge crises in the oil and gas sector, leading to demand disruptions, supply glut, and low prices with global consequences. As this administration marks 6 years in office, guests on Good Morning Nigeria shall be having interactions around strategies and new approaches to the challenges in Nigeria's oil and gas sector.
Very much for that backgrounder. We, of course, have all our guests here in the studio and also via Zoom joining us for this very important conversation. Let's start with the guest whom we haven't had for quite a while. It's been with us sometime in the past. Engineer Emeka, and of course, is the past chairman of the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, and is currently CEO of Oil Data Energy Group. Engineer Emeka, and I'm delighted to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, and then also joining us via Zoom is Audrey Joe Ezigbo, also former president of the Nigeria Gas Association. I'd like to have you, Ms. Joe Ezigbo, this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
My pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigeria. Emeka, great to see you.
All right, and then the big fish in the house would like to introduce him at this time. Is the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipre Silva. Pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's begin the conversation with the Honorable Minister. We know that, of course, you've been with the Buhari administration as Honorable Minister of State Petroleum for 2 years. But, of course, as the saying goes, government is a continuum. And even before your appointment as Minister of State for Petroleum, you had a tour of duty in the industry itself, having been essay to a former Minister of State Petroleum, and played a role as well as being the governor of an oil-producing state, being Bayelsa. But what is your assessment of 6 years of the oil and gas industry under President Muhammadu Buhari, who in the period has been substantive Minister of Petroleum?
I must say that this is, I'm sure, is one of the most active periods in the oil industry. You know that the president himself had been oil minister before now. As president, he has also been Minister of Petroleum for the past 6 years. And if we are talking about people who have experience in the oil industry in terms of administration, I believe that the president is one of those to be counted first. As minister in his earlier incarnation, and of course as minister again. There's been so much that has happened since he came in. One of those things that he has instituted is what is ongoing now, for example, which has not been there in the industry, NIPS, the Nigerian International Petroleum Summit, which is ongoing. It was instituted by this administration in 2016. And NIPS provides a veritable platform for the oil industry in Nigeria. Actually, the president thought that it was necessary for us to have a platform in Nigeria, something that replicates what OTC is doing in Houston, and it's been a huge success. This is the 4th NIPS that is going on, and it's been a huge success. But that's on the softer side. When we came in also, there's been this talk about FID on Train 7. The president will be the first to tell you that when they conceived the LNG project in Bonny in 1978, it was supposed to have done up to Train 12 by the 1980s. That was their projection. When we came in, they were stuck on Train 6, and there was no movement to any other train. But through his sagacity and his leadership, we've been able to take FID on Train 7, which is a major project. That FID was taken in the midst of the pandemic, which is quite significant. We're going to do groundbreaking. I mean, it's over $10 billion project investment that is coming into the industry. It's one of the few FIDs that was taken during the pandemic.
Honourable Minister, could you explain to our viewers FID? I know it's final investment
yes,
decision,
that is a final investment decision that has been taken on Train 7. Of course, the Akk Gas Pipeline has been also a piece of infrastructure that's been discussed over the years, but nobody really confronted it as frontally as the president. Today, the Akk Pipeline is under construction. The Akk Pipeline is a 614 kilometers pipeline taking gas from the south to the north. And a lot of people will say, oh, why are you taking gas to the north? But you must, in Nigeria, if you want to really develop, you must create that backbone, because energy is at the base of any form of development. So the Akk line takes gas from the south and creates a backbone, some kind of right of way for development through the length and breadth of Nigeria. The gas is produced in the south, but the gas is required all across Nigeria. So you must create a market for the gas. A lot of gas is discovered, but because it is not commercially viable, it is locked in the south. So when you create this avenue for the gas, then you can now move that gas to the north where it is needed and create the market for it. So it is only this market that can now also incentivize the producers in the south. And that's a piece of infrastructure, which is a major piece of that has been in planning for 20 years now. Successive administrations have tried to confront it, and we've not been successful. You must have listened to the Senate President yesterday. You must have listened to the Speaker yesterday at NIPS, which is our platform as well. And there, they announced to all of us that in a matter of weeks, that legislation will be passed. You also see the Marginal Fields program. Marginal Fields is taking small fields and giving to our local people to produce. That is the easiest way to really get your people involved in this business, because the oil business doesn't add so much to GDP, but because it doesn't really impact directly on the people. Most of the oil production is done by experts, but the only way you can bring the people in gradually is to give them small production so that they can start and develop capacity. The Marginal Field Program has been talked about for a long time. Nobody really could confront it because, of course, you know, the problems associated with distributing these kind of assets. But the president confronted it. And we've been able to have a successful marginal field round. So the list is almost endless, but I can tell you that these 6 years of President Buhari in the oil industry has been one of the most active times in the industry. And I believe that at the end of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, the industry will be totally different from what it used to be.
Okay, Honorable Minister, you've reeled out some achievements in the past 6 years. Let's take a step back. This meeting you're having, this conference you're having has as a theme from crisis to opportunities. You came at a time, few months into office, the shock of COVID-19 came on and the whole world shook to its foundation. Tell us, how did you maneuver Nigeria out of this crisis, keeping in mind that we're in this recession then? How did we maneuver out of this situation?
Sometimes I really wonder, if not for President Buhari in office now, how this country would have managed. First, you must agree that this administration came in and inherited a recession in 2015, more or less. You know, I always likened it to a broken china that was well arranged on the table. And then you hand it over to the next person. You hand the table to the next person. So the person tries to carry the china up and it's broken. Who broke it? Is it the person that just carried it up now, or was it already broken? So the economy was already broken before the President Buhari came in 2015. And because of his sagacity, we're able to navigate out of that recession. Now again, suddenly, I mean, within the same administration, not due to any form of mismanagement or any problem of this administration, COVID-19 happened on us. And we were one of the first countries in the world to come out. The whole world was plunged into recession. But because of the sagacity of the president also, we were one of the first countries to navigate ourselves out of that recession. I must say that, I mean, you must give some credit. If you didn't give the president credit in 2015 or 2016, that earlier recession, you must also give him credit at this time. It was because of the frugality of the president. And if the president hasn't achieved anything, you must agree that he has achieved something in the anti-corruption front. Why I say he has achieved something was that he was the first president that was able to achieve TSA, the Treasury Single Account System, where all the funds now is put into an account where the president and everybody can see. Now, before now, you know that the problem was having the earnings of government coming into the coffers of government. Before now, sometimes the earnings of government are arrested before government could see what it earned. Now, when it got into the coffers, well, you still probably have other issues with the management of that fund, but at least that first tier of corruption was taken out. That tier of corruption where government earnings were even arrested before they got into the coffers at all, that first tier has been eliminated in this administration.
How did that affect the oil sector, the TSA?
No, you see, it affected the whole government system because now government could see the funds that was coming in. You see that in the oil sector, before we came in, there were even talks about cargoes of crude being sold, and nobody saw the money. I'm sure you heard those stories about cargoes of crude oil belonging to Nigeria being sold abroad. And then, of course, the money somehow didn't find itself into the coffers. So those things happened during the other administrations, and we all heard that. But today, that cannot happen because everything goes into one single account. So everybody can see it. So you don't have any excuse to take any money before it gets into the coffers. I mean, that was a major excuse because what people did, I put it in this account. But it's not a government account. But that doesn't happen again. That is how it affected the prudence of. So I will put everything. If you ask me how we're able to get out of recession so quickly, I will give credit to the president on the basis of prudence. I think this is one of the most prudent presidents that we have had in Nigeria. That is why we are able to come out of recession very quickly.
All right. Honorable Minister of State, just for record purposes, we should, of course, clarify that President Muhammadu Buhari is the first to have fully implemented the TSA. The TSA was started with Finance Minister Okonjo-Iweala.
No, I know. I said, look,
So
I said he had the TSA was not invented by the president or by this administration. But they couldn't. You need to have that political will to implement it. Implementation was a problem for successive government. Even in this, I mean, when you want to implement, everybody wants to be exempted from TSA. Everybody say, look, we have to be exempted from TSA. There were a lot of applications to be exempted from the TSA. But if not for the tenacity of the president, he would have agreed to those requests. And then you see the whole process would have failed again, which was the problem. So the president had that political will to achieve it. And I said that is why this is the first administration to achieve TSA. It was not invented by us, but at least the implementation was full implementation of TSA was only achieved during this administration.
I'd like to pause you, Honorable Minister, and bring in Engineer Emeka, and let's just take a panoramic view of our oil and gas industry. I mean, you attend OTC, you're familiar with OPEC. We know that Nigeria is not the world's largest producer of crude oil. Neither are we the largest exporter of crude oil. But at virtually every moment, oil and gas dominates our national discourse. Elsewhere, where oil and gas is also the source of revenue, so let's say, you go to the Middle East, this doesn't appear to be the case. So we seem to be grappling with, some persons will say, otherwise elementary issues, so that the industry runs on its own, and then you have the spin-off as benefits. What are we saying? Are we coming to grips now with the governance issues that have made this a dominant topic for our conversation so that we can get on with other businesses?
Yeah, thank you very much. The thing is, every economy needs a trigger, needs a driver. And the oil and gas industry has provided that trigger to drive the rest of the economy. Beyond that, every economy needs what I call economic or technical spillovers. And the oil and gas industry, by its very nature, has incubated that expertise required to transform the economy. And I'll give you a classic example. The Honorable Minister has described what happened in COVID. But one of the lesser known facts is that COVID prevented experts from flying into the country from Houston, from Aberdeen, to come in to commission projects and co. But the industry kept running. Why? Because it relied on the resilience and the technical expertise that already existed within Nigeria. I know there were virtual commissions, there were problems, technical problems that happened. So in a way, the fact is that the industry will play and will continue to play a very important role in driving the economy forward. The question is, how has this transformation been to transform just an oil and gas story into a general impact into the rest of the economy? And that's why it doesn't matter where you go to, whether it's a taxi driver or whether it is the market woman on the street, there is some impact, and they want to know what's going on in the oil and gas industry. Yeah.
So how knowledgeable are Nigerians on the oil and gas industry?
Nigerians are outstanding. I mean, against all odds. The thing is working, and what we see now is working closely with the policymakers to drive towards a common vision. The Nigerian service sector is world-class. And why I say that is because Nigerians work at Nigerian companies, Nigerian oil service companies work in over 14 countries across the world. So you can't say that they're just there because they are in Nigeria or they're Nigerians. Nigerian companies now work in Saudi Arabia, they work in Malaysia, they work even in Venezuela, places like even in the US. There are Nigerian pattern companies that have operations even in the United States. So the result is that there's always a transfer of knowledge, transfer of information with the right enabling environment. And I think what we have seen under the Honorable Minister is a greater coordination, right, between the policymakers and the practitioners on the street, the industry, the academia, in a way that probably hasn't happened in the past. And the result is a greater deepening of that impact of the industry, although with just less than 10% GDP impact, has actually spread, can actually trigger the growth of the agricultural sector, the industrial sector. Without, gas can impact all these areas. Without gas, we don't have electricity, and so many ways that you can think about.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer. Now let's go over now to Audrey. Joe Ezigbo, the former president of the Nigeria Gas Association. Well, experts have always indicated that Nigeria is more of a gas rather than an oil country. And we've had gas master plan in the past, and there is also the gas decade that we hear about. From your own perspective, are we well on course towards realizing our potential as a gas country?
Thank you for that question. And yes, you are so right. I want to take it from the angle of the focus, and both the minister and Emeka have touched on this. The fact that over the past 6 years, there seems to have been a more concerted push to leverage on gas and gas development to improve the economy, to industrialize, and improve the standard of living of the average Nigerian. So coming off from the 7 big wins, especially the gas revolution aspects, coming into where we're seeing a lot of focus on the infrastructure element, on the streamlining, on the policy and regulation more than ever before. So programs and initiatives that we've seen coming out, work code, the National Gas Expansion Program, the Gas Flare Commercialization Program, it's a very concerted push. And as you know, the declaration of the Decade of Gas is just targeted towards making sure we achieve this fully gas-powered economy by 2030. So very broad aspirations, very good intentions. Now, what we have seen also is at the same time, a focus on trying to streamline some of the challenges in the gas-to-power sector. This being very important because, one, the power sector is the largest off-taker of gas from when you talk about dump gas. And then also because we recognize that without power, it's going to be hard for us to achieve some of the other intentions in terms of industrialization, in terms of leveraging the potentials of the agri-sector, the health sector, and the like. So that power narrative is critical. So if we look in the last 6 years, we have done very well. The challenge then becomes for us as a nation, and this is where from the industry and leadership, in my view, there is a very serious need for us to make sure that our focus doesn't shift. Why? Because we're facing some very core, disturbing variables. When you look at the level of our population growth, the explosion in our population, the youth demographic, when you look at some of the broader macro imperatives like inflation rates, the unemployment rate, the GDP per capita, these are not things that make for a very friendly investment climate. And so we're also working in an environment where the global world is saying they're moving away from investing in hydrocarbons. And therefore the financing windows are narrowing, whereas we're looking for well over $40–50 billion worth of investments to be able to develop our gas infrastructure, develop especially our midstream sector. Now, the thing I said that is going to call for that concerted focus and push is also the fact that 2020 is around the corner. And as a nation, we cannot afford to all those for the nation, but for the sector, it's important we continue to push all the programs, all the projects, the partnerships that are required for us to truly see at the end of the decade of gas, to see a gas-powered economy. So I think we're well on track. is for us to make sure we don't let the distractions take us away. Private sector is very ready to partner with government. We have even domestically opportunities for local financing, which we haven't even begun to mine. And I think that is key when you dimension it against the narrowing international financing window. So yes, we have the potential, I repeat, to make this a reality. But if we allow the distractions of the season we're entering into to take us away, if we don't pass the PIB, because that's also critical, Minister has touched on that, and that is critical, devising added investments in that space, then we'll be doing ourselves a disservice. But we're positive and we're hopeful as an industry that based on what we have seen, we're not going to get into that kind of a similar outcome as we've seen in previous administrations. And I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Engineer Ennis said oil and gas is a driver or trigger to drive the economy. And at the beginning of the Buhari administration, there was a roadmap set for the sector to increase value in our huge resource potentials while creating the opportunity for both local and foreign investors. So my question is, the president declared then that Nigeria is open for business. How has this roadmap helped to change the dynamics in the oil and gas sector?
Right, so the declaration that the country is open for business makes sense. A lot of the work that has been done, the roadmap that is set, it makes sense. So when we look at the decade of gas, for instance, we're looking at government making very clear statements about how to leverage gas as a transition fuel, about how to enable gas-based industrialization. So we're talking methanol plants, we're talking ammonia plants, urea plants, polyethylene plants, and the like, heavy users of gas that also then provide a lot of employment opportunities, as well as create wonderful export products that can then help the country's foreign exchange, ability to earn foreign exchange. The government is talking about the agricultural sector, the fertilizer plants, and so on. It's talking about the auto gas sector, leveraging on gas for transportation, mass transportation, and the like. And of course, all the attendant commercial, residential, industrial applications that go with that. So it makes sense, and we're putting the right things in place. Now, when you look also at the PIB, I know that there is a push to streamline some of the regulatory interfaces, which creates a lot of bottlenecks within the sector from an investor viewpoint. So the PIB is proposing both the commission and the authority, but I also know that currently industry is pushing back, the economic advisory team is pushing back to say, can we have a single regulator, a one-stop shop? We just want to see how do we make end-to-end the process for investors easier, more seamless. How do we de-risk that process? So a lot of focus on the securitization also of investments. We're also seeing some work being done to address the challenges around the currency mismatch that has been one of the biggest problems in the industry. Borrowing and NAFEX rates and making returns at NAFEX rates, but your revenues are coming in Naira at CBN rates. Some of those things are being addressed to take away the things that constrain investments. Challenges around issues of the fiscal the industry might like, but we see listening, we see some. So the message out there is really one of, yes, we're open for business. Yes, we're willing to do a few things differently to then see how we pull in more investors into the space. And to be fair, this government, more than any other administration, I would dare say, when it comes to issues around gas and oil and gas, more in that engagement space, more in the listening space, that is imperative for the kinds of partnerships that we need to see to grow this sector. So I think it's a good messaging. It doesn't mean that we don't still have other broader issues that impact on investments in the space. Nigeria still has a lot of challenges. Even the security narrative is one that is pushing away a lot of investors. So we have a lot of work that is yet to be done. But I repeat, concerted action to see how we roll out the programs we've put in a consistent manner. Make sure there's no stagnation. Make sure that it doesn't just end up as being sound bites because we now focus on 2023 is here and everybody's attention has shifted away. I repeat, the industry is waiting. Investors, the gas sector is a beautiful sector that we can leverage on for wealth creation, for industrialization. The opportunities are immense. And the implications, like Emeka touched on this to say, for the man on the street, if they have the understanding end to end of what gas can do for this country, all of us really need to bring our hands on deck policymakers, regulators, legislators, private sector players, all the arms of government, and the men on the street to say, how do we make this sector work? One of the last things I want to just touch on before we move on is the issue around gas pricing and also the tariffs for power. These are things that need to be addressed, and I know work is already going on. There's a gas pricing committee the minister set up, which has done some work. We also know that the PIB looks at issues around gas pricing, around that fiscal environment for gas, and we know that the work going on the power tariff. As a nation, we have to recognize we need to incentivize investors. When we pull more of them in, when we allow the market to open up to competition and liberalize further, then we see that those competitive forces over time begin to then, build in those benefits, those dampening of prices and costs that allow the man on the street to truly feel the impact. But when we have a nation, for instance, where we're struggling with 5 gigawatts of power, whereas we should be talking about things like 200 gigawatts. Right now, the onus is in attracting investors, incentivization, so that we can meet that end game of power for all, of industrialization, and a better standard of living for Nigeria using gas and, of course, the attendant support from the oil sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audrey Joe Ezigbo. You just touched on one issue I was going to draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to speak. We're talking about end-to-end utilization, for instance, of gas. And when you look at the public policy matrix, code print oftentimes very solid, but when it then gets to the stage of implementation, you start saying, oh, no, we didn't take into consideration what should have happened. Oh, this one wasn't properly dotted. This T wasn't properly crossed. Look at thermal power stations. We're not going to get into gas flaring because it was said that, look, when you utilize your gas more for thermal power, for industrialization, then gas flaring will also be reduced to a considerable extent. But just looking at power, we have, I think, 10 or so power stations that are supposed to be gas-fired. And from time to time, we have had that, oh, the gas wasn't supplied because there were issues over pricing. They say the price should be in dollars. They produce here locally, it should be in dollars. Oh, the investors come in dollars. And Audrey Joe Ezigbo was saying a while ago, you have to incentivize investors by, tariff and so on and so forth. I'm sure that you are all aware that Nigerians, when they hear about all the tariff and appropriate pricing, these are things that oftentimes just get them agitated. Honorable Minister.
Rightly so, I must say. But, Emeka introduced something to the conversation, which is very important. The oil sector for Nigeria is a driver of the economy, which is very, very key. And gas is actually a major driver. The major linkage of the oil industry with our society is really majorly in that midstream sector. In the upstream, which is the production side, it doesn't really have that much impact on the common man. Of course, the downstream has a lot of impact at the pump. But the midstream is really where the value is created. And Audrey also alluded to that. Fertilizer plants, for example, powered by gas, methanol plants powered by gas, polymers powered by gas, and so on. So you see that is where the impact is created. That is where the jobs are created in the society. So when you have an AKK pipeline, and of course power, just like Audrey said, power is actually one of the most Nigeria. That now proves. Now you have a situation where some power stations are built in this country. And the problem we have is access to the gas. They were not planned by this administration. You will agree with me. They were already built before this administration came. And sometimes you wonder, why will you build a power plant before deciding the source of gas? But these power plants were not built by this administration. We are not saying we're not trading blames, but you say that you will know that this administration is only trying to find the solution to this problem by providing this kind of backbone. For example, there is a power plant being developed, being built in Kaduna. And you have a power plant in Kaduna without any access to gas. Of course, that is already a project dead on arrival. So, but with the AKK, you are going to have a lot of these power plants that are stranded, supplied with gas. So you see that that is what this administration is doing, to try to make that easy, to try to create that linkage, to try to bring the benefit of the oil and gas to the Nigerian. Before now, the fiscal regime for the midstream was not clear. If you want to invest in gas, the fiscal, it was not really clearly provided for in our laws. So it didn't incentivize investments in that sector. Because if you want to invest in a sector, you must look at the fiscal provisions in our law so that you know how you can get back your money. Unfortunately, the law was silent on the midstream. Now, with the PIB, we have concentrated on those provisions, those fiscal provisions that will incentivize investment. Look, if you have 200 million scoff of gas, and you're able to develop petrochemical plants, that was the word I was looking for. Petrochemical plants, for example, fertilizer plants, for example, you can imagine the number of jobs you can create. I went to Indorama the other day, and I saw what Indorama has created with just a little bit of the gas that we have. Just a little bit of the gas that we have. So if we have 10 Indoramas across Nigeria, for example, which we can power, because we have the gas to power at least 10 Indoramas across Nigeria, you know what that can create for Nigeria in terms of jobs and opportunities. So, but unfortunately, this previous administration had not really looked into this sector. So we are now focusing on ensuring that that sector gets a foundation in the PIB. And I can assure you that with the PIB, when the fiscals are clearer in the PIB, we expect that we're going to attract a lot more investment into that sector. And that will create a lot of jobs and a lot of linkage with the society. For now, the average Nigerian, if you ask, I mean, one of the first things, I mean, the only ways the average Nigerian makes contact with the oil industry is at the pump. But you can now have that contact also in the midstream. So when the Audrey is talking about single or double regulators, I mean, that has been an argument in discussing the PIB. I agree. But what we're trying to achieve by having a one-stop shop, by having one single regulator, could be negated by the size of that regulator. Because if you have a big regulator, just one big regulator, it might be more difficult to manage, because one person being on top of just that huge setup might not really work the way we expect it to work. That's why we are saying, look, why don't we focus? So that you now have an upstream regulator. Since we want to focus on the midstream, especially now, in developing the midstream now, let's take out the upstream from that equation. Because the upstream can become a major distractor for the managers of a regulatory body. So what we are saying, okay, take out the upstream from that regulatory body so that we can have one regulator that can focus on the midstream and the downstream, because that is really where we want to focus right now as a country. If you've been following what we're doing, we've been trying to move this country towards gas. First, we believe that the oil economy is on its way out, because gas is the future. And second, we have more gas in this country than we have oil. But unfortunately, all the gas we have discovered has been discovered accidentally while looking for gas. There has been no focus on gas at all previously. While looking for oil. So we have never really focused on gas. So what we are trying to see is to see how we can focus this country on gas, to bring that resource to the benefit of Nigeria. Because once we really get on that platform, we can power a lot of investments.
I'm just wondering, Honorable, thanks a lot for your explanation. But the other leg of my question remains pending, which is the current issues that power stations deal with. I mean, from time to time, we are plunged into darkness. They will tell you that, the discos didn't get power because the power gencos didn't have gas to power their plants. And oftentimes, the squabble is over gas pricing, whether it should be in US dollars, and so on and so forth. And somebody also said this, and I'd like you to take it along, that they appeared, I'm trying to paraphrase what the person said, they appeared to have been a mistake, if you like, that the current gas arrangements, gas supply arrangements, didn't factor in that there were prior commitments for the gathering, production, and export of those of the gas, rather than for domestic use by way of thermal power stations. So, is that a factor in current gas scarcity to thermal power plants? Is that also a factor in gas pricing?
Not exactly. If you are talking about gas pricing, I mean, we've really tackled it as well as an administration. Yes, this issue of currency mismatch exists. I mean, you are investing on the upstream. In the upstream, you're investing in dollars, and then you are selling in naira, and then that provides some presents some issues. But if that is not only in the power sector, we have also had that situation with the small refineries, modular refineries, for example. You have the feedstock, you buy the crude oil in dollars, and you're producing the diesel or the product and selling in naira. But you see, this administration has been one of the first to even confront this issue. If you followed the marginal field program, this administration agreed that we must accept our currency for payment of the signature bonus. And this is unprecedented. It has never happened. In fact, when that decision was taken by the president, that Nigerians must be allowed to pay for signature bonus in naira, one of the first problems we encountered was that there was even no account in existence. A naira account to receive signature bonus does not exist. So we had to take time to even set up the naira accounts. But if you are talking about gencos and the payment for gas, that has been a problem, and it is really, strictly speaking, not a problem of the oil industry. Now you have a situation where the gas is supplied to a genco. The genco takes that power down to a transmission company. For a transmission company, takes the power down to the discos. Now, the gas is supplied to a genco, but the genco has not paid for the gas. It takes the power to the transmission company. The transmission, there is some losses. They always declare some power losses in that process. Now, from the transmission point, there are also losses to the discos. Then from the discos to the people, the collection is about 30% from the last discussion we had. Collection, tariff collection for utilization of power. They collect about 30% of the cost from the users of the power. And they now come back to the gas producer and say, sorry, we don't have money to pay for your gas. So you can imagine if I got into a taxi, for example, and then I go to my destination in the taxi, and then at the end of the day, the taxi man took his petrol for free, and is expecting to pay after he has been able to take the passengers to their destination. So now if the taxi man gets to destination, and he comes back to the petrol man and say, look, petrol seller, and say, look, sorry, I don't have enough money to pay for your petrol. And now he has only 30% of the money to pay for the petrol to drive his taxi. So now he comes back, he cannot pay for the petrol. And the petrol man is expected to be supplying the fuel for the taxi every day. And then he supplies again tomorrow, and the man goes away, and he collects another 30% and comes back and says, sorry, there's a shortfall again. I pay you 30% of the cost of the petrol. How will that petrol producer, seller, be incentivized? So you have a situation where the gas producer is not getting their money, they are not getting their monies back. The Gencos collect the gas, and they are expected to only pay back when they are able to collect the tariff. So if you have a system where the Gencos pay for the gas fully, before we don't care what they do with the gas. So these are structural issues that are being looked at. This is really one of the biggest problems. One of the biggest problems was at the base of our problem. But we also looked at the gas pricing issues. And in fact, why I set up a committee to look at gas pricing was to say, look, this is a product that is produced in Nigeria. We must get the benefit. So how do we make the gas price affordable so that it will actually trigger, like Emeka said, how do we make gas pricing such that it is able to trigger our economy, such that the pricing is optimal for investments in that sector? So there was a mismatch, and which we are trying to achieve. The report is already in, but I looked at the report and I said, look, can we do better? Because the most important thing, we think that gas can drive the economy of this country. Gas can drive development in this country. But that must be gas that is appropriately priced, gas that can incentivize the user on the other end, and also incentivize the producer. Because if the producer doesn't have enough for the gas he's producing, he will say, sorry, I can't produce anymore. And of course, if the pricing is not optimal for the user, the gas-based industry applications, then you see that will present a problem. So that is a very delicate balance we have to achieve. And we've got the report in, but we are still looking at it. And we've had a lot of stakeholder engagement. We are still having stakeholder engagement so that it will be a win-win for both sides. We cannot just say, oh, let's price, because the end user is crying that the gas is too highly priced, then we just say, okay, let's reduce the price. And then the producer will say, sorry, I can't produce on that price. So you see, this issue of currency mismatch is something that has to be delicately looked at, because you have a situation where the producer is telling you, look, I'm investing in dollars. All my investment is in dollars. I want to have dollars back. Then the end user is saying, look, I am selling in Naira. So if I'm selling in Naira, if I buy in dollars, how can I pay back? So we have this kind of situation. It's a serious situation we inherited as a government, and we are frontally facing it.
Okay, Honorable Minister, thank you so much for your input in this discussion. We'll get back to you and our other guests on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries, let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
The Sports Parliament, your weekly sports program, is back to the studio every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. live on the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. Watch out for the parliamentarians with renewed vigor and zest. Mr. Speaker with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. Sports Parliament, a must watch. Sports Parliament, the home of sports verdict. The highs have it.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We have all our three guests here with us in the studios here: the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum, Timi Silva, Engineer Emeka Ene is still with us, and Audrey Joe Ezugbo is still with us also via Zoom. I want to come quickly to Engineer Emeka Ene. I'm just wondering about the knock-on effect of what has sometimes been bemoaned as the high production cost of crude oil in Nigeria. Because when the Honorable Minister was explaining that, look, you have a gas producer, for instance, who says, look, I'm not meeting my cost because you're not paying back in good time. I know that the GMB and NPC had recently talked about the unit cost, around about $35 or so, or $50. I'm not quite sure what the numbers are. What accounts for this high cost of production of crude oil in Nigeria versus other jurisdictions? Are the matters internal that can be tackled? And if they are we tackling them? And if we are not, why are we not tackling them, and what should be done?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's an excellent question. Now, we need first to understand the whole idea of oil and gas. People tend to think that a reservoir is just, an oil field has a pool of oil inside there. The reality is that the rock through which oil produces from, right, the human hair is about 10 to 12 micron in diameter. But the rock through the pore space through oil seeps out is about 4 micron in diameter, which means it doesn't take much to block it. What that means is that I often say that an oil field is female in gender, not male. You have to pet it, you have to take care of it, and if you don't do that, it will shut down on you. I mean, you have to have that perspective. And what that means is that the whole industry is based on a system, a complete system that goes from a handshake that goes all the way from the oil downhole all the way to surface. And once you disrupt that system, obviously you suffer the cost of pricing. The second one is attitude. The fact is that industry rests on service providers. The operators work with service providers, and usually they go into a competition, into bids and co. Then the environment, the security environment also adds to the cost. Back in the 90s, when the oil price was at $10 to $12 a barrel, during one of the recessions in the North Sea, they paused and created something called the CRIN, Cost Reduction in the New Era. And they said, guys, if we want to drive down costs, capital costs by 30%, and operating costs by 50%, we all have to sit around the table. It can't be the service providers are charging us too much. Let's slash their prices. Let's slash and keep slashing their prices. At some point, we're going to suffer diminishing returns. And so the CRIN initiative achieved results because it changed the attitude of creating a win-win situation, saying, look, over the long term, we want to achieve, say, $10 a barrel. How do we do that? What service what do service providers, what do they need to do? What do the government regulators do? Because imagine a situation where service providers are being asked to slash their prices by as much as 50%, and yet some government NDAs still charge their fees as if nothing has happened in the industry, right? And security, also lack of a common standard. So you find that companies that work in Shell have a Shell standard. Companies that work in Total have a Total standard. And the next one is Total. So there's a lot of duplication of standards. And therefore that drives up costs. Security, everybody's carrying security. But the reality is that when we collaborate, we can deal with that. When we collaborate, we can drive down costs. So the moral of the story is that the oil industry is simple yet complicated. It's a couple of multiple handshakes from the sand face all the way to the pump. And if we don't look at it holistically, our costs will not come down, right? So, and the service providers are not the reason why the costs are high. They're working under very difficult circumstances. During the last recession, they dropped their prices by 50%. Oil, because the oil price was low. The oil price has now rebounded, but guess what? The service prices have not followed suit. And steel prices, because everything, all that is iron and steel, all of that, steel prices have almost doubled in that period. So what happens? The service companies get squeezed. At some point, the service quality gets squeezed. And guess what happens? The reservoirs suffer. And because the reservoirs are female in gender, they'll shut down on you. And then, of course, you have the collateral impact.
You have to start wooing her all over again.
Dynamic human beings. Well, based on that, let's now join Andre via Zoom. Andre, you've listened to the conversation here, and it all boils down to passing the PIB bill in the National Assembly. It has been on the burner for almost 2 decades, and it's supposed to ensure accountability and transparency in the oil and gas sector. What is your dream moving forward if this bill is passed before the Buhari administration is over?
All right, excellent question. So it's not so much a dream, I'm really believing this time it's going to be a reality. The passing of the PIB, the Honorable Minister alluded to this, Emeka has spoken to this as well, the fact that we want to see clarity around the fiscal environment for gas. So this conversation about the fiscals for gas, E&P, especially because it's very important for us to unlock the gas reserves that we have. As a nation, we're familiar with the numbers that we have 203.16 trillion cubic feet of proven reserves. But the interest is in the unproven reserves as well, that deliberate exploration for gas only. At the same time also, when we look at the fact that, yes, we have the largest gas reserves in Africa, when you look at it from a production point of view, we are very far below the mark. There is still so much that we can do. And so what we're looking forward to is a situation where even with the 203 TCF, we see more projects that in the midstream, we see more projects that will offtake larger volumes of the gas. So we are seeing end-to-end investments, both on the supply side, on the midstream processing, transportation, storage side, as well also as heavy off-takers of gas, and then seeing how we channel it into different offtake avenues, like I said earlier, commercial, industrial, residential, different sectors that can leverage on gas. So the PIB has been this conversation for so long now, and we believe fully that if we pass it, especially now, the window for gas in Nigeria, this is the biggest and best time for us to pass the PIB and be able to action a lot more of the, the programs and projects we've put out there. What I want to repeat is that we have seen a situation where and again, this is not about this administration. So yes, it was good that the Honorable Minister clarified some of the big challenges we have, especially around power infrastructure, didn't start from this administration. And we see them trying to resolve some of those inherited challenges. But it's also then important that we look at the programs and say, how do we work together to make sure the investors will come in and end to end, there is a delivery and unfolding and a completion of some of the programs we put out there. We've been talking about some of our major pipeline infrastructure projects like the OB3 for years. it's time to complete. I know right now there's work going on, the crossing of the Niger River and all that. So the PIB is going to create that clarity. The PIB is going to give any investor that is looking at gas only that clarity to say end to end, this is how my project will look, this is how the numbers will run, this is how the regulatory oversight, the framework, the legislative framework is going to look like. And so I can plan for 15, 20 years. Many times people don't quite realize that when it comes to gas projects have a different kind of dynamics, different kind of economics, different types of commercial frameworks to make them profitable and sustainable than oil projects do. So now that Nigeria is looking inwards at gas to see how we leverage that resource, the PIB is that one instrument that we cannot toy with. We've delayed. We've passed the gas policy, excellent piece of work. Now it's time for us to codify it into law so that an investor knows exactly what they're working with. I am very confident, and I choose to be confident despite what some people are naysayers. I choose to be confident that the PIB will be passed under this administration, under this regime, so that we can, just move forward. There is so much we can do with gas. I mean, if we had time to spend and dimension what one single standard cubic feet of gas could do, you'll understand then that when you multiply by the trillions, then there is so much. Nigeria can be literally an exporter of so many products, services, so many industrial outputs just leveraging on gas. And that's what I want to see with the PIB. I was speaking somewhere recently and I said it's important for us to visualize the end, what a Nigeria, a gas-driven Nigeria should look like. And if we can see some of the nations like Qatar, like Trinidad and Tobago, there's so many of them, even on the continent here. We are seeing major LNG projects, we are seeing power projects across the continent. We want to see them in Nigeria. That's what the PIB will do for us. And I'm confident we will pass it. We cannot afford to do otherwise. Maybe that's where my confidence is stemming from, that we cannot afford to do otherwise. And I believe the government knows this very well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Audrey Joe Ezigbo. Yes, the government should have that appreciation. And of course, first, it has to be from the National Assembly. Once the lawmakers have this appreciation of the potential exponential consequences, positively though, of the gas sector, then of course we are good to go, as the saying goes. Let's come back to the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum, downstream sector. Recently, there was the uproar over the contract that was awarded for the rehabilitation of one of the two refineries in Rivers. 3 others remain comatose, and from time to time, figures are published as to how much is being spent to maintain those unproductive refineries. And Nigerians are wondering when we are likely to improve our local refining capacity. And of course, they recognize that the Dangote refinery is coming on, but we're talking about those government-owned refineries that have been guzzling money, not producing anything, leading to vast importation and a drain on our foreign reserves. Honorable Minister.
Yeah, that is the crying baby in the house, I must say. It's a sad thing. I mean, we inherited it. I mean, we came in, this administration came in and found the refineries comatose. Now you have a situation where you have workers. The choice is, are you going to lay off all your workers and just shut down refinery? But, I mean, whether the refinery is working or not, there are certain services that need to be put in place. I mean, the place needs to be at least kept somehow running. You need to make sure that the grass is cut, certainly, so that it doesn't completely die out. And, of course, the process of trying to rehabilitate the refineries needed some time to plan and put in place. And right now, we've kicked off the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt refinery. The process of also kicking off the Warri refinery and Kaduna refinery are also ongoing. I must say that these are things that we want, these are projects that we want to deliver. Even if we don't complete it during the tenure of this administration, we want to ensure that we take these projects to a point of no return. Because the challenge is ensure that these refineries at least begin to work before we think of what to do with them. Some people say, why don't you just sell it off, or sell them off as is where is? Some people even say, look, why don't you sell it off for $1? But I say, look, this is a policy that has already been taken before, a policy direction that has been taken before by the Obasanjo administration, towards the end of the Obasanjo administration. He saw that, look, this refinery should just be sold. He sold, I think, one of these refineries to Dangote.
Port Harcourt.
Port Harcourt refinery. And there was an outcry. Oh, why are you selling our common patrimony? So
there's still an outcry in the rehabilitation.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Why do you sell off our common patrimony? Oh, this is he's selling it to his own cronies, blah, blah, blah. There were all kinds of clamor. That sale was reversed. So it's a case of, okay, are we going to take that same policy direction? Then somebody said, look, you know, the last time they took that policy direction, there was so much uproar. Let's try and fix this refinery. At least rehabilitate it so that it becomes functional before we think of doing whatever we want to do. And then you try to rehabilitate it. And they say, oh, why are you trying to even fix the refinery at all? It's a dead refinery. Why don't you just sell it off? I mean, the last time they sold it like that, there was an uproar. So this time we are being careful not to do the same thing, which we saw as a mistake of the previous administration. And now it's okay, let's rehabilitate it before we think of what to do with it. And then, no. You shouldn't have, because this is a dead refinery. How can you, if the refinery was functional, are we going to be rehabilitating it? It is because it is not functional that we are even talking about rehabilitation. Maybe if it were not dead, in quote, we would have been talking at best about, or at worst about, station of a. These are trained staff. If you have intention to get the refinery working again, do you want to lay off these staff that you have trained over the years? Because when you get the refinery working again, you will need those staff. You need that experience. You need their experience. So, do you keep them, or do you let them out? Let them go? So, I mean, that is also a dilemma. So let's keep them. And you know, also, you have the labor issues. NNPC is a government-owned company as well. So it's not a private commercial company that is driven by commercial decisions.
They say slash their pay.
Of course.
Or declare it follow.
So you know, these are not things that you can just wake up and do as a government-owned company, because you will have all kinds of issues. I mean, as you all know, I mean, I'm sure you know all the labor issues that will come out of it. So government now decides, okay, let's just carry on. And then I think right now we're in the process of rehabilitating Port Harcourt Refinery. I want to also tell you, make bold to tell you that we are also in the process of ensuring that Warri Refinery and the rehabilitation of Warri Refinery and Kaduna Refinery at least are started before the end of this administration.
When we're discussing this with somebody, he actually asked me that, where did they even get the parts to rehabilitate these refineries? They're so old.
No, they are. You see, the thing is, the refining technology is not static, just like every other technology. Even these cameras that you see here, I mean, there are different models coming out every year. So if you want to, of course, fix this camera, you might need to upgrade certain elements. So in a refinery, there are parts that needs upgrade because there is new technology. We recognize that, and that is what is provided for. So it is, look, even if you had that refinery functioning, even if it were functioning, you would have also needed to upgrade some of those parts anyway. So now, this rehabilitation process takes that upgrade into consideration, and we're looking at new parts. It's like a computer that you upgrade. I mean, if there are, or even your iOS phones, there are upgrades. You have to do upgrades so that even the softwares are updated every day. So you have a situation where the refining technology is also moving. It's not static. So what we are trying to do is to bring the refineries to the new technology so that it will also be an upgraded refinery. And when these refineries begin to function, they will be functioning as good as new, because...
All right, Honorable Minister, we are pressed for time. Yeah. This program has to end. There's a time delimited for it. We want to thank all our three guests who've been with us. It's been very useful listening to your expert views and recommendations and hopes. Via Zoom, we're joined by the former president, Nigerian Gas Association, Audrey Joe Ezigbo. Thank you for your insight into our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, and here in the Abuja studios, the past chairman, Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, and current CEO of Oil Data Energy Group, and engineer Emeka, and that's Triple E. Thank you very much for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
And also a deep thanks to the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum, Chief Timipre Silva. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for us today on the program. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Not today, do take care of yourself. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Jimo Yusuf. Do have a wonderful day.